Day to viewers, the Colonel speaking to you live from the Grange for British Imperial YouTube Broadcasting. Now, we had a comment on one of my other videos expressing delight with my Gillie Potter record, so I thought, right, got quite a few of those, I'll bung them all on. Here we go with another one, DB466, Mr. Potter Wanders On, Parts 1 and 2, a humorous monologue by Gillie Potter. I will change over halfway through. Here we go.
Hello, England. This is Gillie Potter speaking. Well, my talk tonight is again coming from my flat in Peabody's Buildings, Park Lane, London West. I did intend to be out of town this evening. Indeed, I had booked rooms at a seaside resort. Well, not exactly a seaside resort, an inland watering place. Well, actually, at Southend. However, we are entertaining a small house party. They arrived somewhat unexpectedly on Wednesday, and looked like staying indefinitely, or at any rate until I pay the butcher's bill. I was under the impression, as I told you in my last record, that my only remaining creditor was the milkman. It appears, however, that during the fortnight that I was absent from home after my strange meeting with the magistrate at Bow Street, my wife thought fit to quarrel with the butcher. One day, when ordering half a kidney on the shell, or a whole ox for open-air roasting, or some titbit of that nature, she said, "Look here, Mr. Smithfield, you have given me short weight for my money." "Well, madam," he replied, "you've given me a long weight for mine." Hence the visitors. However, they are quite the nicest broker's men that we have ever had in the house. Much nicer than those the landlord puts in every quarter day, and more cultured, and generally superior to the men who came about the car, or rather the carburettor, which was all that remained after the third instalment was due. They are two in number, with occasional assistance from a third, who arrives at night just before closing time, inquires the particular needs of his confrere, and returns later with what he calls the doings. The elder of the twain is a bright, upstanding youth of 80 or thereabouts, who adds to a general appearance of sartorial neglect a faint aroma of ill-ventilated stables. His wealth of language is adorned by that pictorial metaphor which is only acquired by those who have spent long years in the lower ranks of the army, or a shorter but equally illuminating time in the higher ranks of society. His favourite qualifying adjective conjures up visions of a perpetual shambles. Indeed, with a short correspondence course of blasphemy, he would make an ideal writer of war books. His assistant is cast in a rather softer mould and has the general appearance of having been somewhat hastily constructed. His hair, too, is of that length which, if equally fashionable among his associates, must long since have caused the hairdressers in the vicinity of his abode to commit suicide or emigrate to central Essex. The senior limb of the law holds his second in command, or as he denotes him, his china, in no small degree of contempt, and when describing any of that worthy's shortcomings, which he does on the slightest provocation, freely and at length, preludes the gist of the episode with references to "my mate Milky," or "young balmy ear," or some such other term of endearment suggestive of congenital mental insufficiency. A pleasing pair, in short, whose presence adds colour and tobacco ash to an otherwise drab drawing-room, from which earlier members of the same fraternity have long since removed all trace of pattern on the wallpaper, two of the gas brackets, and a photo of Lord Rothermere.
Right, on to the next side.
So the season at last is over, and London empty. Between Aldgate East Railway Station and Spitalfields Church yesterday, I saw only one face that I knew. Everyone who is anyone is either in Epping Forest or on the Lido. The clubs are deserted. At 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, the East Ham Junior Army and Navy Club was absolutely empty, and the secretary informed me that since Tuesday he had only drawn 3 pints. I was motoring last night in Kent, and when the charabanc stopped at Sittingbourne, I got out to look at what will shortly become society's playground. How much better is the hotel accommodation now than in the old days when I first went hopping? A well-defined path leading from every hut direct to the nearest public house, cold water laid on in every field, and a doctor and a bookmaker within easy reach. How things do improve. The hops, too, are now grown on poles laid horizontally and protruding into the bedroom windows so that they can be picked while lying in bed. Transport, too, is more chic than when I was young. In those days, the gauche soapbox with long white shafts was in vogue, but now one sees the best people moving in with a smart, overhung, understrung, jewelled in 5 holes perambulator. These luxurious machines are easily capable of carrying a mangle, 3 or 4 children, and a spare husband. Frankly, my birthday was not the success from the point of view of being the recipient of numerous and costly gifts that I had anticipated. Indeed, I have done much better in years past when able to inform only a small, if select coterie of creditors than on Monday last when privileged to announce the event and my particular needs to a wondering world. It was a great disappointment to me, though a greater one still to my creditors, who had banked on at least another threepence in the pound as the result of the subsequent auction of jewellery, costly raiment, and perishable foodstuffs. Actually, I received the following. Firstly, a reminder of the continued existence of His Majesty's Board of Inland Revenue. Secondly, a horseradish and 2 tins of green enamel from an admirer in Shepherd's Bush. Thirdly, a button which I lost from my overcoat 2 years last Epiphany under a plum tree in an orchard at Chipping Sodbury. Fourthly, an offer of marriage from Stow-on-the-Wold. And lastly, 2 used threepenny, 3-cornered Cape of Good Hope postage stamps from a schoolgirl who will either be 14 on the 19th or 19 on the 14th. I can't quite make out which. I rejoiced at this last gift, as with an unused 3-halfpenny English, which I steamed off a stamped addressed envelope sent me by a missionary society under the quite false impression that I would return it to them with an enclosure of monetary value, this makes my collection of postage stamps reach the astounding number of 14, 3 of which are unrecognizable, having been attached to the envelope used for many years by an Aberdeen firm as a cover for the correspondence which passed between them and their agents in Steeple Bumpstead. I imagine they might be British, but the firm in question, Haggis Brothers and Goldstein, informed me that they purchased the stamped envelope as a going concern in 1877 from another Scottish firm in Brazil, where it had done similar duty between the 2 Brazilian ports of Montevideo and Cascara Sagrada.
Well, do you know, viewers, I'm finding these monologues rather amusing. They're very good and quite witty. Even though they're 60, 70, 80 years old, they're actually quite good. Thank you, viewers, and goodbye.